Okay, so in lesson activity 5, we're going to think about what we've done in the previous 2 activities, 3 and 4, remembering how the teacher set up a situation regarding the woman at the bus stop. Here we think about what are the stages of the lesson, and also we then think about how we would continue the lesson. So we're going to drag the steps into a logical order and then watch Scott to see what he says. So here are the steps below, and there are.
This is where my positive attitude always gets in the way, because I can see potential for everything, and that's my biggest Achilles heel. So let's look at these. Teacher sets up the situation for the bus. It sounds like that would be number 1. Hey, if the teacher sets up.
Yes, I think that makes most sense.
And drag that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And then the teacher models sentence. Teacher asks the students questions. How long? Teacher repeats the sentence. Teacher checks the understanding. I kind of like it in this order. Teacher models the sentence. I think might be number 2. Yeah. And then student repeats the,
Yes, so I think this is pretty common, where we have
repeat the sentence, and then check the understanding of the concept.
Oops.
Oh, did we move things? Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, just there we go.
Repeats, yeah. There you go. The yellow. It needed to catch the yellow. That's a good tip for everybody. If you don't see yellow, it's not going to stick.
Yeah.
And then the teacher checks the understanding of the concept.
Yes, making sure that students understand when we use things and how long the student was waiting, and so on, right? So how long the lady was waiting.
And then moves into that freer practice right at the end about how long have you been studying English? Yeah, that seems good.
And that's the personalization, sometimes referred to as the 4th or missing P in PPP.
I kind of feel a little confident on this one. I'm not sure yet, but let's see how it goes. Okay. I've made drag and drop mistakes.
So I
let's see what Scott
the
says.
Quiz, and before we see whether we got things right, we can listen to Scott and see what he says.
Good.
The teacher models the sentence so that the students can hear it, and then the students repeat it. That's the controlled part. Maybe then she writes it on the board so that they can see it. Well, she could do this later too, I guess. Then she asks the questions, when did she start waiting? Is she still waiting? This is to check that the students understand the concept. Then she asked the question about studying English. This is a way of personalizing the new structure. It's a bit less controlled, so maybe it comes at the end. Note that there's no one correct order for the stages of a presentation, but it makes sense to move from the controlled to the less controlled, and from spoken to written, and from a focus on meaning to a focus on form.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And so if I click on view questions now, you can see that we've got green boxes to show where we got things correct, and we got all of them right. So very reassuring there.
Yeah, the thing I liked the most there was how Scott said that there's not exactly only one way to do it, but there's sort of some general guidelines of how to go from like that controlled to less controlled. Seems really, keeping that in your mind as a teacher, generally from the spoken to the written, or then from the meaning, then go on to the form. It's just, all of those are just excellent tips for teachers to keep in their mind as they're building that teaching craft.
Yes, and so when teachers are taking the TESOL certificate course, then whenever they have answers that are different, for example, on a question like this, quite often they make a note, and then in tutorials, we then talk about why they might have done something differently, and we start to see different approaches and how they work, and how they might work differently in depending upon your context, which we mentioned earlier. I also really like.
That's what.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
After you.
Oh, no, I always, when I'm working with teachers, is that I might disagree with people, but I just ask them why. And if they can answer why, then I know that it's not just off the top of their head, or they're doing it and thinking about why they're doing it. And
Yes.
that seems to be a really important thing.
Yeah, and underlying that why, then, for example, Scott outlined some of the principles that he saw made sense, talking about those climbs, moving from that more controlled practice to freer practice, the spoken to written, and then the focus on meaning before focus on form.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.